So,
That's
ladies
correct.
and gentlemen, dear friends, we are 1 minute late, my fault. I would like to welcome you to the fourth day of the symposium, Mikrotöne, Small is Beautiful, and we are going to start the first block. And Ulf-Diether Soyka is presenting the paper Notes on Ekmelic Harmony, Partials, Third Messiaen Scale, and Maqam Husseini. And Ulf-Diether Soyka.
Shall I introduce?
I'm sorry.
No matter.
I'm intruding.
No matter. Well, welcome to the fourth day, and it's a day of science and research, but it's not too heavy for us, I think. We are well known to this object. And the first participant this day is my dear old friend and colleague, Ulf-Diether Soyka from Vienna. I may introduce him. Ulf-Diether Soyka, composer, he was born 1954 in Vienna, Austria. Since the year 2006, he is leading the intercultural seminar Mikrotöne, Microtones, enharmonic microtone organ by Hans Andreas Damm is used in his institute at the Prainer Conservatorium in Vienna, where he is teaching structure and composition since 2000. Occasionally, he is working as conductor, for example, the scenic first performances of a ballet Termiten by Dieter Kaufmann. And he wrote contract compositions for the Baku Arts Center, the Hofmusikkapelle Wien, Stadttheater Klagenfurt, and the Bühne am Stetten, Lauer, Austria, and the ORF, Austrian Radio Festival Kinderklang, Theodor Kramer Society and the city of Göppingen, Germany, and more. He composed operas, ballads, masses, 1 oratorium, 3 piano concertos, 2 violin concertos, songs, choral and chamber music, as well as microtonal pieces and audio art. And adding to that, Ulf-Diether Soyka was one of the first participants of the Microtone Symposia. His first participation was in the year 1985. That's 36 years ago. Welcome, Ulf-Diether.
Welcome. So I'm about to share the screen. Okay, here we go.
Pardon, please. For me, it seems it does not start.
Just a frozen picture.
Yeah, that's what I see as well. Okay. Yeah, this is the. Can you see this? That I'm moving?
Only picture.
For me also, only picture.
Only pictures.
No tone?
No.
Okay.
No movement.
Sorry. I mean, I'm gonna try again. Yeah, share sound, optimize for video clip. Okay. Maybe because I did this. I don't know. Do you see picture?
Yes, but second picture.
Do you hear?
According to William Sethares, you change the frequency system, the musical instruments, and world music 2.0. The current lecture, therefore, illuminates frequency correlation.
It was started at second minute.
Can you did you hear when I was playing?
It was playing, but from second minute.
Yes, because I was trying. Okay, I start from the beginning. I'm sorry about that. Okay, let's try again. Please give me thumbs up or something, a sign that everything is okay.
Welcome everybody for the further development of World Music 2.0. Suitable analytical and music theoretical tools are needed. Unfortunately, classical music theory failed in 1932 in its attempt to agree on a common notation method for melodic pitches and tonal systems of various musically high cultures. And since 1910, it has been largely forgotten that there is more than one natural tone series, and how their frequency ratios can be calculated. Today, such competencies are prerequisites for World Music 2.0 to be more than a pastiche of sound collages from folk music traditions. Comparative, non-judgmental music theory can help clarify connections between different tonal systems. Coherent models of connecting microtonal syntax often work unconsciously until now. Eclectic ear training, intercultural composition pedagogy, and aesthetic bridges of understanding can build on them worldwide. Change a single tone and you change the whole world. According to Williams-Ethares, you change the frequency system, the musical instruments, and World Music 2.0. The current lecture, therefore, illuminates frequency correlations that have a profound structure-building effect on Ekmelic music making. Frequency nuances are selected from the inherently infinite supply of pitches. These can occur simultaneously as well as successively in a composition. When imagining, intoning, receiving and analyzing, two questions arise. Which different frequencies are included in the composition, i.e. how many pitches are sounded, and how exactly can these pitches be intoned and distinguished. As soon as a composition with intended pitches is performed, it can be checked how and how exactly the respective default, e.g. the notation, is related to the produced pitch. This can be predefined, for example, by a pre-selection of keys or digital parameters, or the intended pitches may be intoned freely by ear, in which case the question arises of progressively applicable structural models for ear training. Franz Richter-Herf decided on a tone set of 72 different pitches per octave and on the arrangement of the frequencies in logarithmically even cent intervals. Alice Haber had already made the distance order of the 12th tones the comprehensive basis of his harmony theory. Absolute hearing can classify these pitches nearly exactly, but it is influenced by phenomena of relative hearing, by whose function the majority of humanity is influenced. This is influenced, among other things, by sonance thinking in rational frequency ratios, e.g. multiples and divisions of prime numbers, in the derivation of intervals and chords from natural phenomena and tradition. Martin Vogel, for example, also preferred a tonal stock of 72 pitches per octave for his relative interval reference system. Distance and sonance systems use slightly different pitches, even though both include 72 pitches. These frequency differences are smaller in Ekmelic microtonal music than in the 12-tone system. While in 2017 I based my presentation on Vogel's sonance system, this time I start from the distance system. With 72 microinterval steps per octave, the generally available stock of tones is clarified, but not the tone supply of the respective composition. Today this, similar to traditional Shruti thinking, is usually shown in a selection from the 12th tones, and in doing so a preference for certain tone structures in the respective composition becomes apparent. In the notation of Ekmelic microtonal intermediate tones, I see Horst Peter Hesse's standard notation as the best possible compromise proposal. Using the simplest partial tones series, that of the classical string and wind instruments, Hesse's notation can be clarified, recorded with the Duplex Minimuse by Aaron Andrew Hunt. The notation shows how the distances between the individual overtones become logarithmically narrower towards the top. The higher partial tones can be notated precisely with the help of special accidentals, while lower partial tones, simpler frequency ratios, are clearly represented by classical notation alone. Hesse's notation is thus based on the classical European notation of the pentatonic, diatonic and chromatic root notes. Their accidentals remain unchanged and are supplemented by microinterval accidentals where necessary. In this notation, Rudolf Haase's observation of adjusting listening, in German Zurechthören, is considered. When perceiving a pitch, the sounding result is assigned to a well-known pitch of interval size, even if the sounding pitch should deviate slightly from the exactness of the expected tone. The human auditory system reinterprets what is physically perceived into what is presumably meant. The phenomenon of the reinterpretation of pitches also works between microintervals, so that the emergence of the following Ekmelic accidentals become understandable. The word Ekmelic indicates per se that pitches deviate from the traditional European diatonic chromatic pitch system. How far they deviate is now clarified precisely by Hesse's additional microinterval accidentals. This applies both to the deviation from the natural tone series, from the rational numbered frequency relations, and also to the deviation from 12-tone equal tempered chromaticism, from logarithmic frequency relations. The designation as Ekmelic tones suggests in a Eurocentric interpretation of these pitch ratios that the newly added pitches were quasi-derived, outside modified, which was definitely a friendly advance over traditional classifications as secondary or even as false tones. The technical term microintervals is also not suitable for solving this intercultural problem, because, for example, a natural seventh or a blue note cannot be considered small intervals. Regardless of this, here is a suggestion to give each of these pitches its own name, and I ask for your understanding that I am starting from European, more precisely from Austrian, traditions of music teaching and composition theory. I call it S instead of E flat, H instead of B, B instead of B flat, this instead of D sharp, e.g. Here is the basic table. These pitch names are also variations of names of the diatonic chromatic root notes of European provenance. In the right column, adjusted audible frequency differences are indicated. In the column next to them are accent differences in relation to the sonance system of the partials. It has been known since the Renaissance that certain pitches are not exactly written even in traditional European notation, e.g. the fifth partial and the syntonic comma. In the 2017 Symposium, it was shown through recordings and supplementary microinterval notation that pitches are also not exactly notated in 12-tone music. In recordings of Berg's violin concerto, for example, many Ekmelic microintervals occur in just intonation. The 12-tone rose thus represents, similar to Indian ragas, a selection from the much larger microintervallic tone stock. In this selection method, unequal and changing sizes, e.g. of the semitones, were already preferred in classical traditions, narrower leading tones, e.g. This observation corresponds with analysis of the tonality indicators and the tonal path in Arno Schönberg's serial compositions, such as those published by Benedikt Stegemann. One hypothesis is that even in 12-tone compositions the performers traditionally often try to create harmonics which are few beats, German Schwebungen, between intervals tones are possible. Melody tones, on the other hand, were sometimes deliberately emphasized by deviating even microtonically from the classical notated pitch, only in the more disharmonic other direction. From the much larger number of distinguishable pitches in 12-tone music, it follows that consonance degree calculation with, e.g. Martin Vogel's methodology, also works here, and that microintervallic ear training also benefits the performance of dodecaphony. In any case, melodic intermediate tones, for example emotional tones between other tones, German Zwischentöne, and microintervals were and are not typically non-European phenomena. They have been also part of European music practice and theory for many centuries. And not every intermediate tone was considered impure here. Special musical traditions prefer special tone constellations as a selection system from Alois Haber's even 12th tone system, and neglect other interval relationships. The resulting microinterval selection systems reveal new opportunities for intercultural ear training. In Alban Berg's 12-tone cadenza, which I called Harmonia Nova, for example, all 12 chromatic pitches occur. This potential completeness makes it easier to find neighboring microintervals, e.g. when singing. And with just intonation, 6 tones and 12 tones already occur as variations in the 12-tone cadence itself, but not quarter notes. A neutral third, as it is known from Oriental musical traditions, and as it is notated in the frequency ratio 9:11 in the first picture, for example, does not occur in 12-tone music, otherwise it would become a 24-tone music. According to Rudolf Hase, the quarter tone exists outside the range of the adjusting listening, German Zurechthörbereich, This pitch can be interpreted either as belonging to the higher or to the lower semitone range, or as an independent pitch in between. Thus, even serial music, despite its chromatic completeness, remained an incomplete and, in the concert practice, uneven selection from the stock of pitches. Albanberg's 12-tone cadence can be interpreted as bitonal. In it, the traditional partial tones up to the 8th can be represented, also the 6th tone interval and the natural 7th. More exact notation of this pitch according to Martin Vogel, number 4. The basic chord of Berg's 12-tone cadenza contains 6 tones, which are contained in Olivier Messiaen's 8th tone second scale. The major variant of this scale can be built up on 4 fundamental tones as required, on the tone C or S, Fis, A. In the table above, these fundamental tones are marked, and in each case the remaining pitches are notated in such a way that they produce the most beat-free sonance structures to the respective fundamental tones. C to X, cis, C to yes, e.g. This results in the following system. With this note example, the technical term of ekmelic modulation can be explained. Depending on which microintervallic variant of the pitch C is chosen in the composition, this frequency to another of the 4 potential fundamental tones is the most free of beat, German Schwingungen. The XC, for example, corresponds to the just intonation in 2 scales, the one built on Fis and the other built on A. If then the YC is preferred instead of the XC, the sonant ratios within the scale change in such a way that the A seems to be the better fitting fundamental tone. Replacing a microtone with one of its variants thus corresponds to a potentially desired change of the fundamental tone, similar to diatonic music. If, for example, the F in the C major scale was replaced by Fis, the G now appeared as the more coherent fundamental tone of the major scale instead of the C, and vice versa. The change of the fundamental tone can trigger an exchange of the scale notes. This model of thinking is suitable for aural training with more or less sonant, consonant or dissonant harmonies. The second Messiaen scale has a relatively similar effect to the classical major scale. It is thus suitable for changing between diatonic and 12-tone structures. It has a quasi-style connecting effect and invites a change of style, but not as a bridge to all musical styles equally. The second Messiaen scale on C in microintervallic just intonation with tone names, number 7. Also with Indian Shruti names. The 12-tone cadence resulting from the second Messiaen scale, which is built on the central tone C, is produced bitonally with multiples and dividers of the partial tones proportions 1 to 7. However, it can also be constructed similarly with Shrutis on the central tone Khanduvati and in just intonation, with multiples and divisors on the partial tone proportions 1 to 6. Thus, for compositional pedagogy, certain differences and similarities in the change between different pitch systems of world music 2.0 can be clearly notated and distinguished in music theory. Due to the correspondence of Berg's 12-tone cadence with Olivier Messiaen's second scale, however, a lack of the whole tone step 8 to 9 above the fundamental can also be felt in the melody, a clear difference to the second step in major scales. This quasi-intercultural deficit already occurs between inner European traditions themselves. To compensate, instead of Berg's big tonality, the simplest natural tone series can be used as a basic chord structure for the cadenza. Then, however, the question of the completeness of the 12 chromatic pitches arises anew, even if the partial tones 1 to 11 occur in the chord. Picture 8. This cadenza does not become 12-tone complete. The chromatic pitches cis, fis and ha are missing, and if the 11 parts partial are added in the chords, they are not clearly assigned to a chromatic pitch by the listeners. The names of these tones are C cis or B ha and F fis, because they lie between the traditional chromatic root notes. The result remains similarly chromatically incomplete in jazz cadence, first step, second step, fifth step and first step, even when the first to 11th partial tone completes the chord structure there. Picture 9. The subdominant parallele is notated here as an undertone row below A. C cis, F fis and SD cannot replace the missing chromatic pitches cis, S and fis, and in addition a gis or as is also missing. Chromatically complete, however, is a cadenza of Messiaen's third scale. Actually, tonic and dominant transposition are enough to achieve completeness. Picture 10. If the third Messiaen scale is microintervallically modified into just intonation, it contains the simplest partial tone series, and this corresponds relatively closely to frequency ratios of the Maqam Husseini. The third Messiaen scale can therefore also be used well for certain cross-cultural style quotations and for style changes within the composition, depending on which neighboring Ekmelic tone is the preferred one in each case. Number 11. Here too the potential fundamental notes of the scale are marked, C, E and As, and the other scale notes are brought into relation to them in a way that's as free as possible from floating beats. However, one of the 9 Messiaen scale notes is always omitted in this music example number 10. The reason for this is as follows. The 8 notated pitches are close to the partial tones of the simplest natural tone row. In number 11, the partial tones 8 to 15, built on the fundamental C, are notated. Sonant frequency ratios are given below. These pitch ratios are microintervallic. A European 12-tone cadence with this 8-voice chord system is already chromatically complete, with tonica and dominant alone. However, not in just intonation free of beat, German Schwebungen. As a selection system from the Treatises, this 12-tone cadence remains incomplete. One tone from the adjusting listening range B is missing. The close proximity of most frequencies to each other allows for rapid, perceivable changes between styles. The second line of number 11 are those partials 8 to 15, which are built up on the fundamental E, and in the third those which are built up on us. Altogether, this system is as follows. Picture 13. No one of the microtones belongs to two fundamental tones, in contrast to the just intonation of the second Messiaen scale. None of them belongs to two Ekmelic scales at the same time, and this would also not be the case if the missing yes or if G or if ses were included. The third scale also bears similarities to certain musical traditions. In it, tone sequences can be found whose frequencies are very close to Oriental scales. For example, Maqam Husseini, a traditional variation of Maqam Bayati. And when Maqam Husseini is transposed to E and As, the resulting notes also sound close to pitches of the same third Messiaen scale. Picture 14. And the Maqam interval sizes are near and clearly distinguishable to the corresponding sections of the first partial tone series. In absolute frequency, the deviant pitches are adjacent, As and As are very near together. If a single note within a scale or a chord is given a slightly different pitch, not only can a modulation become recognizable, but also a cultural change to the tonal language of another musically high culture can result. It was mentioned above that the cadenza of transposed Messiaen 3 scale used as chords would be chromatically complete. Now the same question arises with the partial tone structures. If one takes the scale of partial 8 to 14 as a 7-tone chord and transposes it into the subdominant and dominant, is the resulting cadence then chromatically complete? Picture 15. The answer is no, and that is even if you use the similar pitches of Maqam Husseini instead of the exact partial tones frequencies. And even if including the 15th partial tone in each of the 3 chords, this incompleteness would not change. The chromatic pitch fis is missing. Instead, several Ekmelic pitches, such as F fis, occur in addition. Berg's double cadenza is apparently the only chromatically complete one that can also include microintervals, if you use 3 harmonies. If the major version of Bruckner's 6-note Devil's chord is supplemented by the minor version, which consists of the missing notes, then 12-note harmony is already achieved with 2 chords and can be modified microintervallically. The third Messiaen scale also complements itself with e.g. its dominant transposition to chromatic completeness. The scale can possibly be used as a 9-tone chord. Other cadenzas, e.g. consisting of partial tones chords or Maqam ratios, do not bring chromatic completeness, but additional Ekmelic pitches, especially quarter tones results or the 11th partial tone, which do not occur in the most consonant version of Berg's 12-tone cadenza. This Ekmelic gain is apparently brought by a renunciation of the potential completeness of chromatic dodecaphony. The threefold superimposition of the partial tone rho or the Maqam Husseini on the fundamentals notes C, E and As has a polytonal effect. It makes the generated third Messiaen scale more complete, but the interference between closely neighboring microinterval creates extreme floating beats, German Schwebungen. The result sounds highly dissonant, much more dissonant than Berg's 12-tone cadenza. Many scales from different parts of the world are very similar in their pitch order. Cadenzas with chord formations from Pelog, Slendro, and Onkai were also investigated in order to observe further intercultural interactions and e.g. to be able to switch easily between different musical styles. Such chords, after transposition into subdominant and dominant, also result in chromatically incomplete cadences. But these structures have other advantages over classical cadences. Pelog, picture 11. When using this scale as a chord, it is interesting that the octave relation is apparently considered less important than the voicing of other, possibly complex natural tonic intervals. The systematics of the frequency ratios of some partial tone series are complicated to calculate, e.g. with second degree of differential equations. For bells, plates, bars and tubes, frequency tables of these partials were first published by Kalene in 1911, referenced by Kurt Anton Reber and used compositionally in chord structures. Slendro, picture 17. All these scales, when used as a chord, do not result in chromatic completeness of the cadences that can be produced with them. So far, also no Aitake structure in the Gagaku tradition has been found that would produce chromatic cadence completeness. An example, picture 18. When cadencing this chord, S, F and B are missing. Chromatically complete 12-tone cadences also did not result from traditional ragas, India, because exact 7 and 13 frequency relations do not coincide with the pitch of the Shrutis. Many traditional scales, chords and sound structures can almost be interpreted as structural parts of the frequency systems of the third Messiaen scale. These interactions are less explored than with the second Messiaen scale. The described tonal structures and their similarities result in potentials for microintervallic modulation and for plural kinds of style changes. However, this also gives rise to new questions about copyright. Just on one example of this, if the Danube waltz is not intonated with the partial tone proportions 4 to 5 to 6, but with the frequency ratios 7 to 9 to 11, is it then plagiarism, a parody? Who owns the copyright when musical ideas differ only by a few cents? These questions can be clarified, among others, on the basis of exact microtone notation and of digital recordings. And many more conclusions and interesting questions can be discovered by composing. World Music 2.0 can be more than a cheap digital storehouse. Picking out the most beautiful and quirky quotes from anywhere or shaping contrasts between ethnic musical traditions in film music. These are just two possible functions of world music. Replacing one tone with another favors a change of key, of scale, or of musical culture. Ekmelic music theory has the task of analytically representing an infinite number of inner connections and interactions between microtonal structures. I thank you.
Thank you, Ulf-Diether. It was exciting to listen to that and to your questions you've asked afterward. We will not discuss the question, but we will discuss the contents of your lecture. And we have only 5 minutes left to discuss them. So I will ask immediately the the auditions. Are there some questions there? Who wants to ask Ulf-Diether? Are we connected? Can hear everything.
Yes.
No questions.
Wow.
Viktor.
Rather a comment than a question. I was pleased to listen to this presentation because I'm into different musical culture. Of course, I belong to Ukrainian one, but sometimes the world music is misrepresented by using similar cognitive map from different culture. Yes, and we need to study also the senses related to the cultures, also the material artifacts, but then we will come to right representation of how it should sound and how it should be represented for the foreigners. Thank you.
Dieter?
Ja, ich bin mir nicht sicher, ob ich alle Worte verstanden habe. Kann mir irgendwer kurz übersetzen die zentralen Punkte?
Eigentlich ist das schwer. Es ist eine Stellungnahme jetzt.
Eine Stellungnahme hatte ich den Eindruck.
Ja, das war's, ja.
Thank you. I think it's very interesting point, very near to what I said.
And to even to Messiaen and his third scale, it is quite clearly that Messiaen, as a pianist too, he wrote and explained all the pitches he heard with in the 12-tone system, our common system, and he did not respect the microtones, of course. He could not. And he composed with the 12 tones. And I think it's quite sure that he used the natural scale for his third scale. It's obviously, I think.
So I have a question. You played the sounds example on your organ?
On this instrument, which I have shown in the video.
Yeah. And it was like how many tones per octave?
It was
how many tones you have in octave? What is the division?
It can change. I used 72.
It was 72, yes, exactly. You explained, yes, 72.
A very fascinating instrument built by Aaron Andrew Hunt. And there could be...
Yeah, I was there. I know this instrument.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we will go to the next. Thank you, Ulf-Diether, for your presentation. We will discuss when we meet again in Vienna. And we have a lot to discuss. Well, then the next, spectacles. Amir Ahmadi. Amir Abbas Ahmadi is a pianist and composer, and he was born 1988 in Ahvaz in Iran. His music ranges from classical to contemporary music, from Oriental music to jazz. He studied engineering at the University of Ahvaz and meanwhile took private lessons in piano, music theory and composition. After the graduation, he followed his desire to study music and moved to Austria in 2012. He studied classical composition with Carola Baukhoit and jazz piano with Christopher Czech on the Anton Bruckner Private University in Linz in Austria. Amir works as a pianist and composer in the fields of classical, contemporary, jazz, and improvised music. Composed regularly for ensembles and organizes events with Studio Fugu, an association founded by him. Has it been founded in Linz?
In Vienna.
In Vienna. So, Amir, it's your turn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would share my screen and maybe we do a quickly test. So.
We can see your PowerPoint. Maybe you can play
Okay,
something.
I have to. So, and you hear also it right now?
Yes, perfect.
And is it loud or should I make it louder?
It's okay, actually.
It's okay.
As you wish.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yes, I start. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to participate in this symposium. It's actually my first time to participate. My topic is analysis of musical intervals based on the early Islamic treatises. What motivated me to do this was that I realized that many musicians does not have enough knowledge of these tuning systems, and actually I realized that many of Persian, Turkish, and Iranian musicians actually use 24 equal tempered. And then a question arises for me, is it actually a valid tuning system for this area, or is something arbitrary? Before going to topic, I want to show you a bit of, how can I just put it away like this? Okay. So as soon as we quit the 12-tone equal tempered on piano, we don't have we don't have just one major second. We will have like many kinds of major second. For example, with the ratio 9/8, 204 cents, or with the ratio 10/9 with 182 cents. If I play, it's like this: 9/8 and 10/9. You hear the discrepancy. And also what is important for Arabian, Persian, Turkish music, the neutral intervals with the ratio 12/11 and 13/12. 12/11 sounds like this, and 13/12. Sorry. That's the discrepancy. To categorize these intervals, we use the word limit. Limit is the prime number, the largest prime number in the ratio. For example, that's 13 limits and that's 11 limits. What is the limit of this ratio? We have to divide the numbers to prime numbers, and then we choose the largest one, which is 5. That means it's the 5 limit. It's just to categorize this. A bit of history I need also for my, before going to history, Pythagorean tuning, you know, of course, if we start from C and then going like upwards with the ratio 3/2, we can obtain all these tones, and then also downwards, we can obtain all these tones. We have C sharp and D flat. They are not identical like piano. There is a discrepancy about 23 cents, and we call it Pythagorean comma. The first one we call lima, the lesser one is it, and the larger one is apotome. A bit of history here is the map shows us the Persian Empire, which is occupied by Seleucid Empire. That's the Hellenistic period. In Hellenistic period, what we have, what I call the injecting of Pythagorean thinking, Greek science into area, and among these, of course, Pythagorean tuning system. After this, we have Persian Empire. End of Sassanid dynasty coincide with burning of Islam at this area. Then Arabs can occupy Persian and also North Africa by going also to Spain and occupy also Cordoba. Under Abbasidan, we have capital city Baghdad, which was very important city. Many musicians, many theorists, many scientists came here, worked together, and wrote many of books. Some of them I will analyze. Arabs, Muslims brought these books to Spain and then translated it to European language. My presentation has 3 steps. The first steps, I will analyze tuning system illustrated in the early texts of early Islam world. The second step is tuning system of current music, and after that, I will do a comparison. To answer my first question, is the today's tuning system based on the early music or not? Or is the 24 equal tempered system something valid, something that can describe the music from this area or not? These are our historical references. Among these references, these four are very important. Why the other one are not so important as this? Because they actually commented on these books. They actually analyzed these books. They actually explained these books. But these four books, these four authors offered new tuning systems in history. That's why actually it's enough for us to have an overlook on these books. Let's start with Al-Kindi. Al-Kindi lived in this period of time. He wrote a book called Risala fi Hubr Ta'lif al-Alhan, a treatise on composition of voices. This is the first music treatise of Islam world which survived. Actually, only 30 pages survived. The rest is lost. But fortunately, these 30 pages is about tuning system. He started like this. He says we have a oud. That's, just imagine, that's a oud with 5 strings. Here is the knot, here is the saddle. He started like this, that he divides the 5th string into 16 equal parts and put the first fret on the 4th part. We can get ratio 12 to 16, which is 3 to 4, with the frequency ratio, of course, 4 to 3. Frequency ratio was, for those scientists at that time, unfamiliar. They worked like Greeks before them with length ratios, but we can just convert it to frequency ratio. It's very easy for us. It means we have here tone F 4 to 3. He says we tune the next string to this tone, then we will get here a B flat 16 to 9, and then also the 3rd string to 4th to this tone, and then going upwards. Again, Al-Kindi did not mention these ratios. He just mentioned just 4 to 3, but as soon as you put the fret, you can get easily these ratios. We wrote it with the frequency ratios just to compare this interval. It's really easy just by multiplying these intervals by 4 to 3. He continues, he says we have already tone E flat. Here we find it on the 5th string and put the next fret here. And then continuing this, we search this tone that we already have on the 3rd string and put the new fret on this, what I marked, and then continue this until going to the 6th fret. These are the frets of Al-Kindi with the frequency ratios. If I zoom in this area, because we don't need this area, we can see it better like this. If we put all these ratios of Al-Kindi tuning system to the table, we can easily comprehend that Pythagorean tuning system with ascending spiral of 4/5 and descending spiral of 5/5. But what happened here to quarter tones? We know that in Arabic music, Persian music, we have lots of quarter tones. To answer this question, maybe 30 pages of this book survived. All of them, the rest one is lost. Maybe he explained about these tones on the last pages. Or maybe these quarter tones at that time was not so important and significant to chord music because they actually commented or analyzed the music of chord. Maybe it was important to folklore music. But to answer this question, we have to go to Farabi. He gives us a clear answer. Tuning system of Farabi. He wrote a book called Kitab al-Musiqi al-Kabir, a grand book on music, which illustrates 4 tuning systems. The second tuning system, Farabi says that's the actual tuning system for that time. The last two, Farabi says that's already out of tune. We will analyze these 2 tuning systems together. This book is around 600 pages, 300 pages about tuning system, 300 pages about philosophy of music, and also he has a very descriptions of Ptolemy's division of tetrachord. It means that Farabi studied the Greek book very carefully. That's the tuning system of Al-Kindi, and until here Farabi shows us the tuning system of Al-Kindi. That's again until here Pythagorean tuning with a spiral of fifths, upwards and downwards. After that, Farabi wants to calculate the intervals of quarter tones, and he changed the approach and he used the arithmetic mean to calculate these intervals. He measured these intervals between D and E and put the frets here. Before I come to the story, I didn't explain about the names of frets. The Arabs at that time used the names for naming just the frets. Motlaq it means the open string. Sababa, it means the index finger. It means this fret always was played with the index finger. Wosta, it means middle finger. They played always this fret with middle finger. Benser, it means ring finger. Khenser, it means little finger. Zaed, it means anterior. It's something additional because Farabi and Al-Kindi and others said this fret is not so important. Musicians could use this phrase, but they could also put it away. It's not so important in that music of that time. That this intervals was not so in use. So again, back to our arithmetic means, Farabi named this interval Persian Wusta and says this interval is crucial for Persian music. And then he goes forward by arithmetic mean and measure this interval and put the next fret here. And also arithmetic mean of this interval, and then arithmetic mean of C and E flat, and then also here another fret. Farabi says that we have no octave equivalency here. For example, we have here A half flat. We don't have an octave of A flat here, and it's good if we use additional frets to have the octave equivalency. He says also we have intervals that are very near together in the octave, but are not really the same. It's also good that we change this fret and then use these ratios here. If we put all these ratios to the table and analyze this a bit, we see this Pythagorean tuning system from Al-Kindi, of course, and then we see right now the quarter tones, which are all 11 limits. I try to play some two scales. The first scales, let's play Bayati and Farabi's tuning system. The tones D, C, D half flat, E flat, and F. And this interval is C and D half flat. 12 to 11, which is an 11 limit interval. If we compare it to D flat with Pythagorean tuning, I mean this D flat, it is like, of course this, it's like Phrygian maybe. And that's the Bayati. Bayati scales in Persian, we say shur. If we play Maqam Rast, scale Rast, which is the C, D, E half flat, and F, on Farabi's tuning system, it sounds like this. That's a neutral third, actually 11 limit neutral third. Tuning system of Ibn Sina. Ibn Sina wrote these two books that we already have, Kitab al-Shafa, Kitab al-Najat. Ibn Sina has the same approach like Farabi, but he says it's better to move this fret that Farabi already used, calculated arithmetically, to the left, and he used arithmetic mean of these two intervals, and moving this fret of Farabi a bit also to left by dividing this in 32 to 39 to 8 to 9. These are again frequency ratio. They work with length ratio. That's why it's inversed. And also by moving this interval to right, by dividing this interval to 7 to 8. This is the tuning system of Ibn-Sina. Let's put it to the table, and these are the tuning system, these ratios of Ibn-Sina. The first and second octave are not identical, which was actually normal for tuning system of that day. Also today in folklore music in Persian, we see that they play intervals in first octave that not exist in second octave actually. And these neutral seconds, neutral third, and actually neutral intervals in Farabi's tuning system are 13 limits. I play exactly the scales what I played on Farabi's tuning system and Ibn Sina's tuning systems. Let's play Shur or Bayati. C, D half flat, E flat, and F. And let's play Rast on Ibn Sina's tuning system. C, D, E half flat, F. We have here 13 limits, neutral third. We can also make a comparison with Farabi, 13 limit and 11 limit. That's the tone of Farabi, E half flat of Farabi, and then from Ibn Sina. 11 limit, 13 limits. So, and actually, Ibn Sina used both intervals, lima and apotome. This is not exactly apotome, but 2 cents discrepancy. We can really reject it. See, it means also the 2 octaves has different semitone. That's very also interesting. Farabi, back to Farabi, explain another tuning system which he says is important for region Khorasan, and we see that after it's important for Turkish music. To save the time, I will quickly explain this fret divisions. These are the 2 strings of tambur. Tambur has 2 strings. Dividing it into 2. And then dividing it into 9 equal parts, putting the next fret here on the 8th part, and then dividing to 4, putting on the 3rd part, and then here, we have the important intervals already, and then he tuned the next string to D, 9 to 8, and then of course we get the new intervals. He goes forward by searching and finding the intervals that already have on the new strings. I just go forward, and we see that ratios going up with high numbers actually. I don't explain. I think you can understand what's happening. Again, if you have a new fret, you have of course also a new interval. You find it in the under string, and then you have again a new fret, and then put the new fret. You have the other interval, and then you search this new interval on the other strings, and then you go also forward until Farabi goes continues until again you have D here. And it's crazy. You have, for example, here C flat with the ratio 4,782,969 to 4,194 to 304. If you analyze this, it's actually not so difficult. It's just the distribution of lima and comma of Pythagorean. Here you have lima, lima, comma, lima, lima, comma, lima, lima, comma, lima, lima, comma, lima, lima, first octave, and the second octave begins with comma, comma, lima, lima, comma, lima, lima. It means it's also change the intervals. second octave is not identical with the first octave. If you put all the intervals in the table, we see that that's an extended version of Pythagorean tuning. Tuning system of Safiuddin wrote 2 books, and he suggested 2 different tuning systems in Kitab al-Adwar and Al-Risala al-Sharafiyya. To save the time, I don't explain how he divided the strings. It's exactly like others. These the first tuning systems, frequency ratios and notations of Safiuddin. If you analyze these 2 strings, we see that's exactly the Farabi's tuning system on tambur. It's nothing new. Actually, Safiuddin did not offer a new tuning system, but Safiuddin did something interesting. He offered, instead of using sum of ratios with high numbers, a ratio with low numbers. And if we analyze it, if we convert it to cents, this ratio is 384. This ratio is 386. The discrepancy is 1,1.95. That's exactly schisma comma. It means that Safiuddin at that time was actually aware of schisma comma. And we can call it reinterpretation of this ratio by changing a comma, a schisma comma, and getting a just intoned ratio, a just intoned interval. And if we compare it to diatonon syntonon from Ptolemy, we see that's exactly the same. If I play this diatonic, and that's the third with the ratio 5:4. It means Safiuddin used just intoned third. And these are the phrases of Safiuddin which I applied this thinking of schisma changing to notes that are possible. For these high numbers are not possible because they have discrepancy of Pythagorean comma. You cannot do it here, but these intervals are not also so in use. These are more in use, and it means that Safiuddin could apply these intervals to the intervals that were highly in use. And this is the tuning system of Safiuddin Ormavi, again an extended Pythagorean tuning by applying for some intervals the schisma comma. I name it AS, it means A of schisma, A of Pythagorean with schisma discrepancy. Safiuddin also suggested another tuning system. He said this tuning system is more familiar for Persian musicians. He explained like Farabi, that's the tuning system of Farabi. He put these frets away. He says we don't need it, and then move these 2 frets to right and left by again calculating arithmetically, and then obtain these new intervals. And this is the other tuning system of Safiuddin. I put it to table, and these are ratios of Safiuddin. So that was actually my first step of presentation. I analyzed the important tuning system of ancient Islamic or early Islamic period. Let's do a comparison with the today's tuning systems. Let's start with Iranian tuning system. Hormuz Farhat did a research on today's tuning system of Iran. He wrote a doctoral thesis, and then compared many tar and setars, modern tar and setars of Iran together, and measured the interval of frets, and then put it to the table, and also used a mean for these intervals, and suggested this table as a valid tuning system of Iranian tuning system for the Iranian tuning system. If we compare it to Ibn Sina's tuning system that we already showed, we see that Pythagorean tuning is still there. Tone, for example, D flat from Pythagorean tuning, D, E flat, E, F, G, A flat, A, B flat, and C we have already. It's the same, is maybe 1 cent discrepancy. It's already the same. But beyond this, we have also neutral intervals. That was actually the intervals that are different from scientist to scientist, from Ibn Sina to Farabi. We explained that Ibn Sina used certain limits, Farabi used these intervals with 11 limits. But if we compare Iranian Turing system with Ibn Sina, we see that these intervals are actually 4 cents discrepancy, here 2 cents difference, here 7 cents, and here 6 cents. It's not too much discrepancy. And we can say that these intervals of Persian Turing system is actually also 13 limits. There are 3 intervals that have large discrepancy. But I think I would say that that you have this Turing system of Ibn Sina before 1,000 years ago, and Persian music, and it's still you have like 95% of intervals the same. It's something amazing. It's something has to do with the history, especially this movable intervals, like neutral intervals, and it's like 4 cents discrepancy. It's amazing, as I also realized it. Let's do it the same with Turkish tuning system. We know that Yekta Bey suggested a tuning system 24 unequal Pythagorean tuning system as a valid tuning system for Turkey. This tuning system is exactly again what Farabi did on tambour. Again, exactly the same. And what Safiuddin did is also approximately the same, but these tones did not exist in Safiuddin's tuning system, but of course in Farabi's tuning system, all of them exist. But what happened here, we don't have these quarter tones actually. We don't have intervals with 130 cents or 140 cents or 150 cents. These neutral intervals are not there. Before 15 years, as of 15 years ago, Ozan Yarman is a new scientist, is a new musicologist in Turkey. He teaches in the Istanbul University. He did a new research on musical intervals, and he realized that actually in tuning system of Turkey we have intervals, neutral intervals, or neutral intervals like 14 to 13, 13 to 12, 12 to 11, and also a major second with the ratio 8 to 7. And he suggested instead, he rejected the tuning system offered by Yekta Bey, and he just suggested a more valid tuning system with 80 tones per octave. He also suggested a tuning system, 24 unequal tuning system, which are actually taken from these 80 divisions of octave. And we know also that in Turkey they have an instrument called qanun, and they have also they tuned this instrument to 72 equal parts per octave. It means also that Yekta Bey tuning system could not be valid, because why they did it traditionally 72 equal parts. And I think, yes, that's the tuning system of Ozan Yarman, suggestion of Ozan Yarman, which have all these quarter tones. I call it quarter tones. It's not mathematically quarter tones. It's just a name that we can understand each other. It's not mathematically, of course, quarter tones. And in the book, Das Arabische Tonsystem von Liberty Manik, he also compared intervals from Maqam Rast in different regions in Arabian countries. By Maqam Rast, because Maqam Rast is a major scale for European, is Maqam Rast for Arabian, this kind of identity. We see that I put from Syria and Egypt and Congo. This Congo was in 1932. Many Arabian musicians came together and analyzed the intervals and suggested these intervals. We see that we have major second with two kind of these intervals that we already had in the history, but more it's 9 to 8 and one example we have here, 10⁹. We have the quart, which is stable. We have the quint, which is also stable, and B flats we have with 2 ratios. And if we analyze also neutral intervals, we have this interval in stereo. It's exactly what Farabi stated. This interval exactly what Ibn Sina stated. There's a certain limit interval, certain limit major, certain limit third, neutral third, excuse me. And we have also intervals that didn't existed in the history, 16 to 13, 17 to 14. Now I want to have a comparison with the 24 equal temper tuning system to show you why this tuning system cannot be a valid tuning system. Just compare it to Iranian tuning system. We have many intervals with more than 10 cents discrepancy. Here are what Hormuz Fahad suggested, and here are the these intervals are 24 equal tempered, and these are the discrepancy. And for Turkish music, what actually Ozan Yaman suggested, we have also 30 cents discrepancy. We have more than 15 cents discrepancy everywhere. It's like, of course, this tuning system cannot be a valid tuning system for this area. To have a conclusion from my presentation, I showed you at first of all, the attempts of Oriental scientists to find a tuning system which can describe intonation of that time. We saw Farabi, Ibn Sina, Safiuddin, and Al-Kindi. We saw that there was always Pythagorean tuning for what they called unmovable frets. And we saw there were also neutral intervals. They were movable. They were not always the same. And every series suggests his own suggestion as a valid tuning system for that area. To this tuning system, we also then understood that to this tuning system is deeply rooted in the history. Of course, music is something alive, it's not something dead. Of course, there is an evolution. It cannot be that after 1,000 years, nothing changed. But to have, for example, Persian, if we see the Persian in the Persian music, we have neutral second that exactly before 1,000 years ago. Ibn Sina suggested this interval. It's like, for me, something interesting. And they offer different kinds of tuning systems valid for different regions. What can be seen also today from Turkey to Iran, and also in the Turkey, there are many intervals. There are musicians that one plays 11 limit neutral, second the other one 13 limit. And as a conclusion, we can deeply say that 24 equal tempered cannot represent this diversity, especially in case of neutral intervals. 24 equal tempered, I mean, destroys the cultural dialect. There is dialect, there is Turkish dialect, there is Iranian dialect, there is neutral intervals, there is musicians, when hear the music, they say, okay, this intervals is from these musicians, but 24 equal tempered actually ruin this kind of culture. And I would say that 24 equal tempered cannot be a valid tuning system with what can describe the tuning system of this area. Thank you for your attention. These are my references. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amir, and congratulations. It was a wonderful work you did. As I remember, I did not find an example like that to investigate all the ancient philosophy and musicians of Arab and Persian tuning systems, and you had come to a fine result. And what's most interesting, that these systems and all their kinds and specialties are used today in different countries of the Islamic world. And I want to open now a discussion and ask around who has a question or a comment.
Yeah, Dieter. Dieter.
Dieter. Dieter.
Yeah, I would like to say that the main problem for me seems to be the ear training of Europe. We cannot understand, we cannot hear these little differences. And therefore we should make big progress in music pedagogy.
What I want to say also that many, as I said at the beginning of my presentation, I heard from the famous Persian setar players, they use equal tempered. And I was really, and because actually the first one, he was very famous. He was studying in France, and after this period, he came back to Iran and he wrote a book. His name is Vaziri. He wrote a book, Dastgah of Persian music, and then he suggested equal tempered, and he said that's good. Why not? And actually, then it started in the Persian that many other setar tar players began to do it equally. It's like egal.
The 24 division. No?
Again?
They played the 24 division.
Somehow yes, like equal, but 22, but use 22 of this 24 equal tempered. Yes, but equal tempered. But there is, I mean, if you see the folklore of Persian music, I found for example, Hajj, Qurban, and Tambur, and I analyzed the intervals. They use exactly certain limits, and he cannot write. He cannot. I mean, he's like. And he didn't study anything. He cannot, but it was certainly. I was like, it's like so deeply in the history.
I think Hans Gunther had
a
question. Yes.
I have no question because everything was very clear, and of course maybe I have no question because this sphere of music of Turkey, Iran, Arabian scale-based music, it's wonderful, and so I feel still I have a lack of knowledge of that, and of course as European trained musician, I started to learn more first the European microtonal approaches. But it is wonderful. I have never seen a so good overview about the tuning system. And please share your your presentation. And so also I remember I had a student few years ago from Iran, Ashia Samsaminia, maybe you know him or not. And one time he was asking me about these tuning things, and I could not answer him. It maybe your presentation is of course everything is in this is researched somewhere, and you have to really hardly find it, but it's so good made overview.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the books that I studied is a new book called Musical Mathematics by this book, and he did a big research on Indian music, Persian music, Turkish music, Arabian music, and also European music, and that's amazing books. Chris Foster, and you see also in my presentation, I listed it, and it's really amazing. It's not, of course, enough, but it's enough information. But for Turkish music, Ozan Yarman did a big research also. It was amazing also what he did. And I would say in Persian music, it's not enough investigation. It should be more research in kind of Persian music, because it cannot also be a tuning system for everything. In Persia, you have like different cities with different cultures. It cannot possible to have just one tuning system valid for everything. But what also Hormuz Farhad suggested, it was for Tehran. He was in Tehran and he studied this classical tuning system of musicians of Tehran. But if you go where else, and then it's like, of course, something else.
That might be the reason that Sikha were neutral third, and the neutral second. How do we call it? Neutral third or neutral second? Sikha.
Neutral second, neutral yes.
Second, yes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in the theory. Mm-hmm. Now, neutral second, neutral third, yes, there are different. Yes, of course.
So different, and like you have shown in Syria and Egypt, and even in Persia, that will be very different.
Yes, yes.
And they are derived from the books of Safi ad-Din and others, and Al-Farabi, Al-Kindi. And when you ask the musicians, why do you play this note, this pitch, and not a deeper or higher, what will he say? I know that I play the version from Safi ad-Din. I think he will not answer.
No, it's not like this. No. I mean, they don't know also. I mean, that's also the problem, that the musicians are just, I mean, they're also the famous one. If you talk about Farabi, they didn't read this book. I mean, they are just musicians, and then they say, okay, we always played like this. I don't have any idea. But there is that's a really new research, actually, I should say. And these books also didn't translated in they are not translated in English. I think in France we have, and just part of these books, not all. I mean, if you want to really study these books, you have to know Persian or Arabic, because it's always like some of this.
That's a pity, but I think it would be very important for the Western world to get knowledge of this music.
I think that could be a good research for musicologists of today, to really study these books. I mean, this famous book from Farabi is 600 pages. It's exactly, he analyzed the Ptolemy's tetrachords. It was like amazing, because he studied all these books, ancient Greeks. And then, yes, but this part, for example, is translated into French. I know this.
French. So
but just this part.
There's only one translation in European language, but it's very important that it exists. And you had done a very admirable work. Thank you very much.
Rami has a...
Thank you.
Is there a question?
Rami, please.
Rami.
Can I ask a question to Amir, please? It's... I don't know if you agree with me, Amir. I mean, the music Dastgah would be different from east to west in Iran. I mean, it depends also on the tribe. If you are talking about the Kurdish or the Persian in certain places. So personally, I prefer to call it a local, not a national. Dastgah or Maqam, etc. Because as you presented, in Syria and in Egypt, it's different. And even in Syria itself or in Egypt itself, if you are going between Said, Masr, Egypt, Said, I don't know how to translate it, to be honest. And Cairo, it's very different between classical Arab and between traditional, other kind of traditionals. And even side music, it's between south and east, it's different. So personally, I prefer to call it local, not to call it national.
Yes.
I don't know if you agree.
Yes, I agree. And as I said, also from region to region, it's also different. And I also explained that Farabi at that time, I mean, 1,000 years ago, said there are different tuning systems already.
Exactly.
I mean, that time. And then, of course, it's like this, what you said. And that's why I accent that 24 equal tempered actually destroy this dialect, because music is like have dialect like language, and if you like say it's equal, then you don't have any dialect. It's like we speak all like.
That's the result. We already had come together. And I believe we shall start. This is a starting point now for a new symposium we had in Salzburg 2007, Oriental and Occidental Harmony. And we could continue this perhaps one day, and we will meet there. Well, it's come. Thank you very much, Amir.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
And now the next theme will be the family of 24-tone unequally tempered tunings. That is connecting to our last lectures. And I present Viktor Pushkar from Ukraine. Born in Kiev, Ukraine, 1967. Has experiences in music and sonic arts since 1990. He's a composer and keyboard player of art rock ensemble Blemish from 1993 to 2004. In 2007, he founded the Maqam, a series of composed and improvised Mikrotöne duos. His project includes collaborations of Viktor Pushkar with keyboards and electronics, with Julian Kitasti, Vladimir Voigt, bandura, Sergei Popovich, electric guitar, Martin Jaga, cello, and Sergei Ochrimchuk, violin. Occasionally, he is active as a guest keyboard player, composer for audiovisuals. MSc in Audio Engineering, 1992, and PhD in Psychology, 1998. He developed interest in alternative tunings since the 1990s, and he uses own custom scales since 2004. Active, he is a researcher in social science, interdisciplinary studies, and his experiences in research method development, field data collection, and analytics. He worked for Taras Shevchenko University of Kiev from 2001 to 2011 as academic teacher. He's co-founder of a social transformation group from 2019 to today. So, Viktor Pushkar, it's your turn, and we are...
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I will start sharing the screen. Okay, and here is my presentation. Can you hear me well? Okay.
Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So actually, my first question is what is just noticeable difference? So the minimal interval most people are able to recognize, and actually it was meant to be comma. Everything less than comma had no meaning for a long time, but some recent research from Ukraine provided the evidence that most people can recognize intervals around 10 to 20 cents. It was Gennady Kolob who did his experiments with teachers of musical school for children. Yes, his data on 5 to 6 cents is controversial. And he also noted that he had more success with students who didn't have previous training in classical music. So children who were new were more easily to recognize those narrow intervals. As some evidence also exists from Eastern cultures like Turkish or Arabic that this maybe 11-cent interval is some kind of universal. So well-trained musicians with well-calibrated perception are able to recognize it. Actually, 72 equal distance octave is pretty close to that minimal interval. So what is smaller might be not so beautiful, but simply perceived as detuned unison. Why equal temperaments are so widespread? We have convenient notation system, which is relatively easy to learn. We have that famous piano type keyboard. We have nearly unlimited options to transpose. Some composers like this option, some dislike, but anyway, it is possible. And what I have to mention as a psychologist is perceptual predictability of equal temperate scales. So we know what the next tone should be in melody, and we can also more or less predict how the harmony sounds in equal temperations. So actually, most researchers of equal temperation notify that everything that makes sense beyond 12 should be a bit smaller, so 17 to 72. But I don't want to repeat what you already know. I want to remind the interesting idea of Wendy Carlos, who proposed non-octave division, also equally temperate. We will return to her ideas a bit later while discussing the unequal temperaments. So why just intonation? Simply because consonance is related to low-level processes in human audio analyzer. To put it simple, humans enjoy the consonances. Evidence exists since the time of Helmholtz. Helmholtz did excellent study of the consonants. He also proposed 24-tone tuning, but it was unequal. He thought it would be better. The recent evidence exists in neuroscience. People who are researchers who are into neuroscience can have hard science evidence that people differently perceive equal temperate and just intonation intervals. So we can call this reaction better, subjectively better, but it's not scientific term. But we can distinguish strong consonance, which is perceived in most listening contexts and with most instruments, and the weak consonance, which is perceived in some listening contexts and with some instruments. After making this redefinition, we can look at the example. Okay. Does this interval make a consonance? It depends on the timbre. Which sound sources do we use? We can do it even with simple classical oscillators. Let's see. Sol and square wave. This is how they make a consonance in this frequency. But what happens if we change the waveforms to the opposite? You can do it at home condition. I think everyone has some option for oscillators, and you can repeat this experiment. If you trade places, the waveform places, it would not sound so much consonant. So probably the conclusion is that if we want to play microtonal music on synthesizers, we should have the proper patches, properly constructed sounds that include both even and odd harmonics. And actually, Oh, okay. If we go further, what I did? I did the list of all pure intervals starting from the number 12, and here they are. And there are intervals between the just intonation intervals that repeat more or less often. You can see that one is approximately quarter tone, a bit smaller, and the other one is 1/6 tone. That's the intervals that repeat. The other repeating intervals could also be used for the scale construction. Okay, and finally, why unequal temperation? Some evidence exists from Ukraine. We had prominent theorist Natkevich, who was active in early 20th century. So he insisted that traditional Ukrainian music is essentially diatonic, despite we have different traditions in different areas. Traditional Ukrainian instruments should be tuned differently. Unfortunately, very few freedom of expression was available in Soviet Union. Natkevich was executed and he didn't finish this work, but he had some pupils who continued his theory, and actually it was not just about the reconstruction of tradition. It was also about the enabling of the experiments, further experiments. So we have the decay of local diatonic tradition in Soviet times, and we have revival thanks to the musicians from Ukrainian diasporas in Canada and United States. We didn't have something like mono tradition in Ukraine. We also had some interesting artists in klezmer, Ashkenazi Jewish music, and I think that tradition is more preserved in diasporas as well, in particular in the United States. Klezmer had interesting influence to American jazz, and probably it still has. We also had local tradition of Maqam in Crimean Tatars. Crimean Tatars had classical Maqam composer, Gazi Giray Khan, who is still often performed in Turkey. Okay, and if we switch to Maqam, I would like to mention Amir Ahmadi, who was already mentioned today, for his reconstruction of traditional Turkish music, which also enabled some further experimentation. He constructed 24-tone scale, which is convenient for playing contemporary Turkish Maqam. He also constructed some other scales, but that magic number of 24 is still with us. So that's why I got the idea of constructing 24-tone scales. Following the instructions of Natkevich, I came first to 17-tone scale, which didn't satisfy me, and it was not actually not suitable for playing Ukrainian traditional music. Okay, but when I switched to 24, everything happened much better, and I'm still able to use the scale practically. What's good about unequal comparison? We have good approximation of just intonation intervals, a convenient cognitive map. We can use some kind of established notation, and we still have that piano type keyboard. But mapped to where one octave is mapped to two octave. Actually, we have diatonic scales with different contrast between large and small interval. I will expand it further. We can construct playable octave and non-octave UT scales, and we can sound either very sweet or very weird or anything in between. Now, please look at two examples of constructed scales, both constructed with Scala. This is the one I use for Bandura. You will see many familiar intervals. Maybe some will coincide with intervals of 24 tones of involves. Maybe something with Turkish intervals of Azan Yerman, but
excuse me, Viktor. I mean, we were really doubting about it. Should we see your presentation in your computer, or is just you talking?
Am I visible or?
Yes. Okay.
Oh. Okay. Demonstration. Oh, okay. Do you see the presentation?
No, you have to press the green button.
Okay.
Share screen. Make sure there are two boxes, small ones.
Oh, okay.
Hear sound and say, okay, thanks. Okay,
sorry,
yeah,
sorry.
Okay, because it was always stronger. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so, and here is another scale, which is one of the narrowest possible ones. Here you see it is 1/6 tone, 31 cent, and 1 comma. This scale is pretty useful because it allows to adjust to almost any other scale. As you see, I intentionally avoid this 100 cent interval. I have very few water tones, only few of them. Which one? This one is important. So 347 cent is approximately fifths divided by 2, and it's also one of the just intonation intervals. So that's why it is here. And 555 cent. That's also work in this system, and you see also that's what is called tone in Iranian music, if I don't mistake. Okay, and we can have many possible scales, like this very simple formula that allows many solutions. Some would be interesting, some would sound good, and I experiment with this for many years. So I have approximately 6 scales I use regularly, and I have about 20 I leave for further experimentation. And actually I can share my Scala files if anyone is interested in. So here is my list of literature, the ideas of people I used for when I came to scale construction. I would like to mention that the intervals I found most useful here. Some of them were also found useful by Wendy Carlos or by Harry Parch in his music. You see, as is okay. Yes. And if we look closely at 1/6 tone and the quarter tone, it's like also the interval of 70 to equal temperate, and some other are not, like this 53 cent is an interval from alpha B, quarter tone. And this is what we can use as formal octaves. Actually, I started with this, octave 24, and switched to non-octave. And probably what else? You can listen to some of my music, not all of it, but probably some representative part. And if we still got the time, I would like to introduce some music for electronics and bandura I did with great master Julian Pitasti, who lives in America and Canada, but who visits Ukraine, and that's this one we recorded in Kiev. Do we have time?
Yes. Is it playing already, Victor?
Can you hear it?
No.
No.
Did you share audio, this little box, when you share screen? Maybe you go out and then in again and tick this little box.
Okay.
Or I can do it from here. Maybe it's faster. Okay, so you can share again, please. And okay. Did you tick this little box, audio sharing?
Okay. Can you hear it now?
No. Because there's a little box when you share, it's really small. Okay. Can you share? But when you click first time, there's a very little tiny box. Let's try. Otherwise, you can send me the link in the chat and I can play it from here.
Okay. Okay. I just stop it and we go to discussion.
Yeah, we have plenty of time, actually. No, 10 minutes.
So I would like to mention that bandura is kind of a very specific instrument, and there is an opinion that bandura can play everything, and in fact this is not the case with bandura. Some peculiarities of instrument should be taken into account. I know that many people like to use ethnic instruments to perform classics, to perform pop music, but it doesn't always work this particular way. And I think that traditional tuning of bandura is
excuse me, Victor, I will stop your screen sharing, and in between I'm gonna look for your YouTube videos myself as you continue talking. Excuse me. You can continue normally.
Okay. Okay. I I think on YouTube I have slightly different music, not this particular piece. Okay, and okay, so let's do it. So. Okay, but you can put YouTube on or whatever.
Viktor, I
Yeah.
found Havansky Bridge.
Oh, okay. That would be, but that's not Bandura. That's electronic plus
Yes,
electric
yes,
guitar.
of course. Okay,
Okay.
Viktor.
Okay.
Bandura, of course. Yeah, sorry, my mistake.
That's okay. Yes.
Okay, so there are many actually, but it should be your own. Which one should I play, Viktor?
Okay, just okay. Let's be Havansky Bridge.
Okay, because I made a picture of your music before, and so, or should I go channel? But then Viktor Pushkar, yeah. But then I didn't your channel. I couldn't find your. I can't find your channel. Tema, just tema. But okay, I'm gonna share my screen so you see what I'm doing now. Okay, excuse me. I'm trying to help. Okay, so I share. So you can tell me. Oh, no, Bandura.
No. Okay. We can use this one where I play solo. Okay, I will explain it
this
later.
This one? Okay, lovely.
Okay.
Okay.
I will explain a bit about the scales I use.
Thank you.
That is one of the scales I consider weird. This is 1050 cent divided to 24. It has very few normal tones, familiar from classical European music. I use Prophet 12 as a sound engine, and I use TBX1 tuning box to convert from keyboard to synthesizer. On the other manual, I use this very small division on percussive instruments, just exactly 700 zip whips divided into 24 again. So, and in this case, it works, and probably some tunings could be more user-friendly. This was a kind of avant-garde festival, and it was received well. But I also have tunings more appropriate to play with regular musical instruments, and even with people who don't care very much about microtonality. So the tuning can fit to almost anything, to reconstructions from ancient music, like Renaissance or Baroque pop. We have some authentic scale. We can add some non-authentic scale which sound closer. It can be used for some experimentation as well. Okay.
Should we go to SoundCloud? Hans Gunther just put the link there.
Maybe SoundCloud. I have a thing for called Turbanissimo with Turban player, and I have a thing with Bandura.
Okay, so I'm gonna share screen here, so you can tell me.
This one with Bandura. Okay. This one is shorter. I think.
This one, Turbanissimo?
Turbanissimo is the thing with Turban. It's a bit long. We can play just a fragment. Okay, okay.
From Turbanissimo or from another one?
Yeah. Okay, Turbanissimo would do.
Okay. Oh, nice. Okay, I will stop. Yeah, I'm sorry, Victor. I first muted you because I didn't understand. I didn't know that the sound was coming from the composition. I'm really sorry about that.
Okay.
I would like to ask you if it's okay for you that we go now to questions. We have 9 minutes.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Viktor.
Yeah, you don't see us.
I think we should use, thank you.
Congratulations.
We'll use the time and ask around who wants to ask or to comment.
I didn't get where your concert, the hall or the building where you were playing. Could you say this again? I didn't catch it.
Okay. The first one was a festival in Chernihiv in the museum. I played different venues and actually with Julian Kitasti we played at National Academy of Music. And I don't have this video, and it was a trio, 2 banduras and 1 synthesizer. I played Prophet 12 and I played some physical models of percussion from the soft synth.
Very nice, thank you.
Perhaps one question from me to your theory. As I told, it was 24 unequally tempered tuning you preferred, and starting point was with just intonation scale of 12, and we added, should be added by other intervals that come from Turkish music, from Byzantinic music, that's all in Ukraine and Western European and Asian tone systems. And other exactly 12 other tones should be added to our 12-tone system, or are there more? That's my question.
Well, actually, what I do first, constructing the scale, I try to approximate 11 limit intervals. When I'm done with it, I might add something to sound more dissonant, more weird.
As contrast.
Yes, I don't want to sound very sweet like pop music. I want to be able to express different moods, including the negative ones.
So the contrast will be the effect of all. Yeah. Okay, I understand. Thank you. And some other positions or questions? Nobody. Nobody has to be anxious. So perhaps we can talk about, as we have 5 minutes left.
You want to ask anything? Otherwise, maybe we can listen to your music again. 1 minute, 2 minutes, Victor?
Okay.
Let's do it. Okay.
Okay.
You have another example?
Yes. Can you tell me which one, Victor?
Okay. Probably that short improvisation with Posinta and Bandura. Okay.
It's called like this, short improvisation.
Okay.
I go down, you tell me.
Pushkar and Voigt improvisation for Bandura
yes,
and Sins. Okay. The short one. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I stop this.
Maybe this is one.
But we only have a very short time. I also wanted to ask you, Viktor, if you had the chance to work, maybe, I'm just curious, with Maxim Trianov from Kharkov. He's a great improviser, and I've seen him improvising. Maybe he's here with us. Maybe he'd like to say something. I mean, he's been with us sometimes.
Well, I know Maxim Trianov. We have a community of improvisational music in Kiev called Paranoise, and we exchange the visits. Yes, I didn't play with Maxim, but I would like to play with him once or twice or maybe longer.
Which one? We have 2 more minutes. Which one do you mean? Should I share screen?
Okay.
Or you play it yourself?
Okay. Where is it? Let me see. Maybe the first one, which is called No Muzurgia without Sonurgia. Not the entire thing, but maybe the intro.
Okay.
That one.
Yeah, we have less than a minute now.
Okay.
Well, otherwise, maybe you can write some links. I mean, Hans Gunther wrote your SoundCloud. Maybe you can write in the chat for later. Now in the break, we're about to, I'm sorry, I'm intruding. Johannes.
No, it's okay. Okay. So we could continue discussion if wanted in the next interruption. Thank you very much, Viktor.
Congratulations.
And the discussion is open. We can continue this in the next months and years. I hope we'll meet together, perhaps next time at Salzburg. Thank you. And goodbye then.
Thank you very much.
We have a short interruption, about half an hour, and we'll meet again at 3:30 p.m. That's in 30 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, stretch
29 minutes.
Okay.
Goodbye.
See you. Thank you. Congratulations.